All right, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, can we take a minute to talk about Corner Store Carolyn? Or Caroline, Carolina, Carol, I don't care. Well, listen, can we be honest? I think we should give everybody who continues along this trend of calling the police on black people for any and everything, can we just give them all the same nickname? Because it's starting to get a little hard to keep up. I can't keep up with Barbecue Becky and Permit Patty and Coupon Carl. It's too many of them. So I nominate us to just call everybody Apple Care, okay? Remember that lady at the Apple store that just flipped and lost her mind because something went wrong with her order and she didn't get what she asked for and she just went off on everybody in the store? This lady.
I was told by Apple Care that I could walk in the store and get the part.
Yes. I think we should just call everybody Apple Care. Side note, I hope the kid that was in that stroller wasn't asleep because if she, listen, by the time she slapped that stroller about that second or third time, I can tell you right now, that kid's dreams were interrupted. Like, I feel like sometimes when you dream, the channel changes while you're dreaming, and I feel like every time she slapped that stroller, like, the kid's dream changed. So it started with, like, Mickey Mouse at Disney World, and then when she slapped the stroller, the dream shifted, and all of a sudden, Mickey Mouse was in a mouse trap. So, yeah, she done traumatized her own child. But anyway, back to my point. Here we are again where we have this situation where people are calling the police on black people for being black people in public spaces. I'm really convinced that everybody's playing this game of call the police on black people bingo, and we just don't know about it. And like literally the next piece that everybody's trying to get, because everybody's on like 4 in a row, they just need that 5th piece to win the game. It's like calling the police on black people because they can smell their cooking. You know, like, I don't know, I can smell it. I don't know what it is they're cooking, but I know it's spicy. And I had my gallbladder taken out 10 months ago. I can't have spicy food. I am offended. I'm calling the police. Like, I just see, I swear that's the next move. I swear that's next. Either that or somebody calling the police at somebody at their own concert because the music is too loud. I see it coming. Like, Jay-Z and Beyonce's tour just wrapped, so it won't be at that show, but Drake's still on tour. Drake, listen, man, turn that music down. Somebody gonna call on you while they're in the venue sitting in the front row. Anyway, so with this situation, there's a woman named Teresa, and Teresa is at some, corner store in New York in Flatbush, and there's a boy who's with his mother and with his little sister. I'm guessing that he's coming back from school, and maybe she picked him up, or I don't know, but they're on their way to go do whatever family thing they're doing. And somehow, Teresa, or Apple Care, I forgot we got to use our new nicknames, Apple Care feels that the little boy sexually assaulted her because most likely he brushed up against her, and I think she felt that she was grabbed on her behind, and so she felt that she was sexually assaulted, and so she called the police. And so, of course, everybody's calling her out. So before I go any further, let me just go ahead and play the video so the context makes sense. It is a little uncomfortable to watch, and if you follow me, I don't like posting anything that's traumatic when it comes to the plight of black people, but for the context of this video, I do have to post it, so just a heads up. It is a little uncomfortable to watch.
Bureau? No, I want the cops here right now. No, I'll talk to you. I'm gonna stay right here. I'm gonna stay right here. I'm gonna stay right here. It's our problem. Yeah.
Oh, man.
White lady calls the cops on a black lady. I get it. Yeah, they're videotaping. Mentally ill. Yeah, that's right. The son grabbed my ass. She said and she decided to yell at me. So I'm gonna stay right here.
There we go.
There are officers down the block. They want
Corner Store Carolyn. That's what that is. Don't cry, little man. Don't cry, little man. Because she's calling the cop. That's Corner Store.
Now, why don't you upload that to World Star?
Go away. What is your problem? I'm calling you out. You seriously just called the police on a child?
On a police officer.
Go away.
No, white lady, I will not.
Okay, white lady.
Look, why?
So I have a bunch of issues about this video, but first let me just say this. I find this disturbing because one, Apple Care, you live in New York of all places. And I'm sure you go to Manhattan at least twice a month, which is a very, very modest assumption. Because, but my thing is this. If you've ever been to New York and you've been in Manhattan specifically, especially if you're in Times Square, literally you can't go anywhere without being brushed against your chest because you're just shoulder to shoulder, like everybody's just pushing everywhere, everything like that. If you go into Manhattan, once you get into the other parts, Brooklyn and all that, it's more spread out. But at least Manhattan, everybody is in Manhattan at some point if they live in New York, maybe once a month, maybe twice. And in those instances where the gang gets out and then everybody's trying to get on the AT or the E line to go to whatever part of town, and you're shoulder to shoulder, you bump with anybody. So my question is, does she call the police every single time that happens? I just want to know. Because it's interesting that of all the people that you want to go out and get pissed off about, you do it with a child. And really my little theory here with that is because, again, I've always said, black children don't get the luxury of innocence. They don't. Black children, unfortunately, because the world has always been racist and because America is just rooted in it, a lot of the aggressions that are pushed towards black people as a collective also trickle down to the children. And so the children don't get the luxuries of having that freedom. Here's a perfect example. I've seen 1 million episodes of America's Funniest Home Videos, which, side note, they had the most lit theme song back in the 90s. Little stories come to friends next door. Like, that was my show when I was little. But anyway, I've seen 1 million videos where there's like a kid running, like a happy little white kid in their family, they're playing football or something, and he's running to try to catch the ball, and he's not looking, and he runs into a lady's butt. And then everybody laughs, and they, and then that family wins $100,000 and a trip to Hawaii. That's not the luxury that black children get. Because black children, unfortunately, a lot of people, they either over-sexualize those children or they force those children to be adults when they're still children. A perfect example is Tamir Rice. You know, Tamir Rice, somebody calls the police and says there's a guy at the park with a gun, or there's a kid at the park with a gun. The police pull up and they see a 12-year-old kid, and automatically they think this is an adult, and in 2 seconds Tamir Rice is dead. Literally 2 seconds. Not even enough time for him to process what the orders and the commands that were given to him were, because he was already shot before he could do anything. You know, that's the experience of black children. And for her to go out of her way and to bring up something so extreme like sexual assault because she was brushed up against, I have a problem with. And so the part that makes it more not entertaining, but the more interesting is this. She knew she was wrong. She knew she was wrong. And there's video evidence showing that she was wrong, which we'll get to in a second. But she knew that she over-exaggerated this. And really the problem was she had ego and pride. And the ego and pride made her dig even deeper into the realm that she was in, and she wasn't coming back out of it. She was going to prove her point and try to be right by any means necessary. And I think that was triggered because she didn't like the fact that the boy's mother told her about herself, and that people that were watching told her about herself. And now that the boy is crying and there's a crowd coming around, she recognizes that she's in the wrong. She's being shown in a bad light. But she, at that point, has her by any means necessary mode going on, and she's going to make sure that somebody believes her. And so she knows that she can call on the one thing that will help to validate her standpoint: the police. Because, you know, listen, this is the country we live in. The police, a lot of times, a lot of white people who want to go out of the way and do things that may be questionable, sometimes when they need that validation or they need somebody in their corner, they'll call the police. And I know you guys, some people don't like me talking about race, but this is all about race. Y'all got to stop running from race. It's not a bad thing to talk about it. Once you understand that race brings up culture clash, because within the different races, we all have our own different cultures, and the reason we have these issues is because our cultures don't always align, that's when we can start actually getting to solutions. So y'all got to stop running from these conversations about race. It's okay to bring it up, okay? Calling out racism from a structural standpoint is not an attack against you individually if you're not doing anything that's wrong. You know what I mean? But going back to my point, she has too much ego and pride. Her ego and pride is set in, and now it's, I don't care. I saw what happened. And she went from being brushed against to, I'm sexually assaulted, he grabbed my behind, which is what you saw her say in the video. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't even say that in the first half. And then she's lying, talking about she's saying that, you know, she was a police officer, this, that, and the third. And the part that gets under my skin is she can see this little boy crying. The boy's cry alone is a cry of innocence that is now gone forever. You know, that boy, he's not going to be the same. You know, but you hear the innocence in his voice. And she doesn't care. She's like, I don't, you know, and again, it goes to the fact that she can't see him in the same lens that I see him, because in my opinion, like I said, black children don't get that innocence. She sees him as something older, you know, and it happens all across the country. Like, of course, I work with kids, and I remember one time I was taking some of my kids to Dave & Buster's, and the Dave & Buster's that we were going to is also, it's in a mall. And so sometimes, because I don't really wear a suit and tie to work because I'm hands-on, so a lot of times I'm in like t-shirts and stuff, and sometimes I look like one of the teenagers. And so I'm taking the kids to Dave & Buster's. These are the kids that, you know, have not got on my nerves for the month, so they get a nice little trip. And so we're all walking to the spot because we done parked and everything. And as we're getting to the mall, because you got to go into the mall to get to Dave & Buster's, security, whoa, where are you guys going? Where is the adult? I'm like, right here. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure there was an adult. We don't really have a lot of idle kids running around here. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, I've seen 1 million groups of kids coming in here all the time. Whether it's a prom group that's getting ready to go out, whether it's like a group of kids that are coming here for laser tag or something. Let's save it. Just say you saw a bunch of black kids. You thought they were about to come in here and do a grab and go at the mall. It's okay. That's how I interpreted it. But anyway, but the thing is, people like her are dangerous because they're willing to let the truth be, you know, something on the back burner, because their priority that they want to push out there is how they feel. They feel that they've been inconvenienced, and so they want everybody to feel that inconvenience as well, and they want everybody to give them sympathy. And so even when they're wrong, they'll flip the switch and do that whole "I'm a victim, I'm crying, woe is me, woo woo woo." Like that's what Barbecue Becky did when she started all that crying with no tears. You know what I mean? And so it just makes me think of a bunch of things. And we could talk about Emmett Till, but I've talked about him a million times in this video. We could talk about Rosewood, but I've talked about Rosewood a million times on this channel as well. We could talk about Tulsa, but you know, I've talked about that a million times. But you know, this specific example reminds me of George Stinney. Now, fortunately, this didn't really escalate into anything too crazy, but this reminds me of George Stinney. If you don't know who George Stinney was, George Stinney is one of the youngest people ever executed in this country, as far as capital murder, with a capital murder charge. George Stinney was 14 years old. 1944, I want to say it was Mississippi. And long story short, he's accused of killing these 2 young white girls. I think the girls were like 7 and 9. And long story short, the girls go missing. Everybody's looking for the girls. George Stinney's father even helps to look for the girls. Unfortunately, the girls are found dead, found beaten to death. And George Stinney somehow becomes the main suspect. Now, there's no real witness accounts. There's no witnesses who saw him doing anything. He was the one accused. It really had to do with the fact that there were only so many black people in the area, and he was the one that they decided they were going to make an example out of. And so within a span of 3 months, with literally no evidence, barely any witness accounts, really a thrown together trial that was just some nonsense, just to really appease the anger of a lot of people who were pissed that 2 white girls were killed, George Stinney is convicted and killed. And so they put him in the electric chair. This boy is so young and so small, he can't even fit in the chair. The straps don't fit around his arms. He's not even high enough for his head to reach the little electric thing, you know, that they put on their head. They literally put a Bible under his seat and made him sit on top of the Bible so he'd be high enough to get shocked. I said, oh, the irony with the Bible, really. And so, you know, he gets killed. And now he gets exonerated, you know, 7 years later. But the point I'm making is, anything could have happened with this kid at the corner store. You know, if you really would have thought everything out, what could have possibly happened? Let's just say the police came. Let's say the police bought her story, you know, and then from that point, now fortunately because the kid was only 9, there's only so much that's going to happen. But let's just say the kid was 14, because at 14 in the state of New York, you will have to register as a sex offender if you're convicted of a crime. And so let's just say something happened. He was 14, and now he has to register as a sex offender. Now even going to school is a challenge, because he can't be around the regular kids or the other kids at the school. You know, they got to reapproach his education, which most likely means he's probably not going to graduate because he doesn't have the right resources and everything like that. There's no longer any investment in him, because now that him at 14 being a sex offender, he's now considered pretty much a waste of time. Nobody's going to invest in him, this, that, and a third. That's going to affect him when it comes to applying for college or scholarships, because there's rules when it comes to getting in the dormitories and this, that, and third, and so on and so on. And then we talk about jobs. Like, I mean, stuff like this follows people for life. And for her to be that selfish and so into herself that she really thought that, you know, that was appropriate, I have an issue with it. So let me get to my main point. Let me go to the actual video that shows what really happened. So as you can see, they're in a corner store. Apple Care is, you know, I don't know, maybe she's getting scratch-off tickets or something. You see the little boy, just walking past. Maybe his backpack brushes against him. There she goes. All right, now she's flipping out. Let me flip back. So you see, literally nothing happened. But she was so set in her way that she was going to push this thing from her being brushed against to all of a sudden he grabbed her butt. And she's calling the police. And the fact that she even acknowledges that she looks foolish. She's like, yeah, okay, all right, it's the white woman calling the police on black people. I know. She doesn't care, because she recognizes, like, at this point, the cameras are on her. She has nothing to lose. What, you know, who are they gonna believe? You, me, or you? You know, it's funny. And I'm like, y'all will sit here and throw the book at a little 9-year-old boy that you think did something, but y'all were all silent about your current Supreme Court justice that just got put in. Nobody had an issue with him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand it. All these politicians and public figures that are actually doing things, y'all want to stay silent on, but you want to throw the book at a 9-year-old boy who actually did nothing. And the last thing I want to close on, because I know there's going to be people who are like, oh my God, you're so dramatic. It's not that big of a deal. Wah. You people make everything about race. And I'm like, see, every time we start calling folks out from a structural standpoint about things that they like to do as a collective, then they want to individually feel attacked. But anyway, here's the point. Fortunately, in this case, not a lot happened with the boy. It could have been a lot worse, but it didn't escalate into anything where anybody was arrested or this, that, and a third. I mean, I personally think the kid has some traumatization he's going to have to deal with. And speaking of child trauma, I just want y'all to know, these kids that y'all keep separating at the border from their families, and these kids who keep watching their families and neighborhoods be blown up in the Middle East, they're going to grow up to be adults, and they're going to remember everything that's happened to them in the last few years. So I just, listen, some of y'all are going to have a lot to answer for, so y'all get ready for that in the next 10 to 15 years. But anyway, what I just want to say is, small microaggressions like what Apple Care did at the store have led to bigger problems for many people within the black race for years and years. Our history has shown that. If we want to just talk about Emmett Till for one quick second, the most interesting thing about Emmett Till is you had the woman, Carolyn, so interesting, Carolyn Bryant Denham, who was one of the witnesses who pretty much told two of the men who were pretty much charged with killing Emmett Till. You know, she was like, yeah, they also grabbed my arm, this, that, and the third. She said all these different things, and a lot of what she said, people believe that's what provoked the people to go out and go kidnap Emmett Till out of his sleep and then, you know, castrate him and beat him to death and then tie him to a cotton gin that weighed like 70 pounds and throw him in the water. And so, you know, her testimony, which she later admitted to lying about, where she pretty much said, okay, it wasn't true. And mind you, she's still just walking around being free and stuff. You know, on the weekends, she's probably at home watching Golden Girls or something, living her best life, still alive, you know, not in jail or anything. You know, her small little white lie that Carolyn or Apple Care also told led to the death of a child. Led to, you know, and it's not just that. Like, if we just want to talk about America's history, and I said I would start using my books a little bit more in these videos. So I shouted this book out once in my Your Questions, My Answers, 1919, the Year of Racial Violence. I just want to read one quick excerpt real quick. It's not going to be that long. It's going to be like literally a paragraph, I promise. Just to prove my point here. So, boom. Between late 1918 and late 1919, boom. That's only a span of about 1 year. Okay? The United States recorded 10 major race riots, dozens of minor racially charged clashes, and almost 100 lynchings as white Americans tried to enforce the continued subjugation of black Americans in the post-war era. The major riots examined in this study took place in Charleston, South Carolina, May 1919, Longview, Texas, July 1919, Bisbee, Arizona, July 1919, Washington, D.C., July 1919, Chicago, Illinois, July 1919. Listen, we ain't even got out of July yet, and all this is going down. Knoxville, Tennessee, August 1919. Omaha, Nebraska, September 1919. Phillips County, Arkansas, October 1919. Gary, Indiana, October 1919. And Bogalusa, Louisiana, November 1919. Nationally, the official death toll the official death toll exceeded 150. The majority of the victims were black. All right, so the point that I'm making, I'll just sit right here for now. So the point that I'm making is this. A lot of the race riots that took place in America from the 1800s going into the early 1900s, many of them had to do with small white lies. Many of them had to do with small little microaggressions that weren't based on anything. Some were built around other things like issues with unions and workforce strikes and everything like that. But a lot of the riots that took place, and that was just 10, and that was just in a 1 year span. There are dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens. Like literally every major metropolitan city in this country has had some sort of race riot before 1950. And I'm not even talking about the civil rights era. I'm talking about everything before then. You know, some kind of race riot. And a lot of it had to do with white aggression towards black people. A lot of it had to do with white victimization about something that black people have done to them when in reality nothing really happened. It was just small white lies. And even though today people are not having race riots and people are not really lynching black people, they found different ways to do it. They can do it with the prison industrial complex. They can do it with housing discrimination. They can do it with job discrimination. They can do it with the politics. They can do it with the judicial system. So the point that I'm making is this. Even though times have changed and you really don't get to just go and lynch people on trees anymore and get away with it most of the time in 2018. But these things can still affect people. These things can still grow into something worse. And the perfect way that you can lynch black people in 2018 is gentrification. Lynch them out of their own neighborhood. She most likely, and mind you, this is Flatbush that this crap happened in. First of all, she wouldn't have been in Flatbush 15 years ago. I'll say that. But my point is this. As these neighborhoods change, what's happening is the people that are moving into all of these neighborhoods, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's New York, whether it's DC, whether it's Houston, like any area where you used to have a lot of black people and now things are changing because people are being pretty much pushed out of where they live due to socioeconomic reasons, just pretty much make the property taxes skyrocket where they can't afford the property values or the taxes anymore and everything like that, and get rid of the housing vouchers and different things like that, and just pretty much phase everybody out. As they're phasing everybody out, they're bringing a lot of old traits with them, and those old traits are pretty much just reforming and evolving and being used against black people in the same way that they were being used 100 years ago, just without the bloodshed. Now it's policy. It's a bunch of different things. I mean, fortunately for that kid, it didn't escalate to anything, but it could have been worse for him. It could have turned into something totally different. You know what I mean? Anything could have happened. And so I just need people to be aware of that. And I didn't mean for this video to be that long, but it's just, God, like, y'all don't get tired of bothering people. Mind y'all business. Leave people alone. I just found it so interesting that she was so set in her ways and she was really going to milk this. And it's always people with shades. Something with the shades. Like the big old dark shades she got on. It's always them lifeguard shades. You ever seen somebody that has to work at the pool and there's a bunch of like summer camp kids at the pool? Those are the most pissed off lifeguards in the world. They just mad all day. I said walk! Like they just look like they don't want to be there. Like something about the shades. Like Barbecue Becky had them same shades on. I don't know. You see people with shades, just go the other way. It's gonna be some problems. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe.